Hello everybody, I hope you're all doing great. It's definitely been a while since I last checked in, so here I am to give you a little update on what I've been doing and how the project's going. So I'd like to start off by saying that there were some setbacks, the biggest one being a broken forearm bone, along with a dislocated wrist. I'll spare you the x-ray with my wrist bones being in the wrong places. Basically what happened was I was on a snowboarding trip, I jumped off a ramp in the snow park, and somehow in the air I started to rotate face forward, which made me panic a little bit, and I basically tried to protect my face with my wrist, which was a subconscious reaction. It's not like I planned this. So yeah, considering this caused my hands to be in the wrong place, you could say that I threw my fist like Rayman, just not very far. So now I'm a bit of a cyborg, as this whole ordeal required me to have surgery, where they put in a metal plate in my arm. And by the way, I want to say, insurance is such a scam. I won't bore you with the details, but after breaking my arm, I had to spend like a day and a half non-stop on the phone fighting tooth and nail for the insurance company to allow me to get the surgery I needed. That experience was much more painful than actually breaking the arm itself. Yeah, but anyway, I'm just happy they gave up eventually and let me get the surgery in the end. So anyway, for as long as I had the cast on my arm, I took a break from the project because, well, moving in 3D space and typing with one hand is just not worth the hassle. I actually started learning a foreign language instead, since I had so much time on my, well, hand. Alright, that's enough of that. Let's move on to some happier topics. So, all things considered, I'd say the project's going well, as I completed all the missing cutscenes aside from the last one, the one in the heart of the world. I'm really excited to show you them, but then again, I don't really want to post like a 30-second video of just one of the cutscenes, because I feel like it'd be better to showcase them in a video that's a walkthrough of the whole Fairy Council level once that's done. So if I show them now, I feel like that would kind of spoil the fun for later. Although actually I think I've come up with a good compromise. At a random point during this video, I will play 1 second of one of the new cutscenes. How does that sound? So yeah, that's another reason why there hasn't been any update in a long time. It's just because the things that I've made, I'm kind of keeping a secret for now. But what I'm not keeping a secret is the model that I'm working on in the background. If you're a nerd, you'd know it as a Tribelle. According to the Rayman manual, it's also known as a heebie-jeebie. Yeah, I could call it a heebie-jeebie. That's a pretty good name. I also made the lizard, or again, if you're a nerd, you'd call it a Matuvu. And I'll show the model later in this video because I feel like posting a separate time-lapse for both of these little models is a little too boring. Okay, I'd love to go over some Discord questions posted by the community. Let's start off with a question from Carlos, asking, will it be possible to play the game in different languages? So basically, yeah, I would love to add in the other languages. I haven't really looked into it much yet. I imagine it shouldn't be too difficult. So unless for any weird reason it turns out to be a huge hassle, then yeah, I would like to add in the other languages. The only thing is that I'll probably at some point need some help from the community, because since I don't know any of the other languages, I probably won't be able to know which dialogue corresponds to which dialogue in the audio files in other languages. So yeah, if someone at some point could help me with naming the other dub files in a way so I know what they're saying in English, then that would be a huge help. This is a very popular request, by the way, in my YouTube comment section. When starting this project, I haven't considered how much people love the dubs that they grew up with. Like, it makes perfect sense, but I still found it surprising since it's just not something I ever thought about. Alright, thank you, Carlos. That was a great question. And even bigger thank you for the kind words. I'll move on to the next one now. Dalek is asking which level I would remake if I were to remake another level. So, of course, it would be one of my favorite levels, and that would be the Desert of the Knaaren. Yeah, the thought of remaking that level makes me salivate. Unfortunately, I probably won't, but if I ever get tired of working on my own game after this project and want a bit of a break, I'm pretty sure that's what I would do. At least remake the reflux fight arena. And if I were to remake that boss fight, I would want to make it insanely hard, like a Dark Souls boss, where you'd have to use the roll mechanic. I would strip away that net where you could hide from the boss. Yeah, that'd be really cool. Even just making a 3D model of one of the Knaarens or Reflux would be so much fun. I don't know, maybe I'll continue making some of the 3D models just for the fun of it, even if not for the game itself. Just don't consider any of this what I'm saying, I promise. I'm just daydreaming right now. Okay, thank you for the question. Next one is from Fractured Soul, basically asking about a first-person mode. So for the Matuvus, oh sorry, forgot I'm not a nerd. For the lizards, I need to at least create this basic first-person mode that was in the original. So I don't really see a problem in taking this a little further and allowing the player to actually walk around in first-person mode. Even if it turns out kind of gimmicky, I don't see any issue in just giving the player the option to play around. So long story short, yeah, I'll try to add in this functionality. Why not? I'm just not promising that it's going to be a polished first-person mode experience. Alright, thank you for the question. We have another one from Dalek Richards. Out of level design, character modeling, rigging, animating and coding, what would you say was the most difficult and time-consuming task when it comes to working on this project? That's a really good question on its own, but Smyslow proposed to turn it into a tier list. Well, that sounds good to me. Let's do this. I think there are kind of two ways I could approach this tier list. One would be to make a tier of general tasks like rigging, animating, modeling. A different approach would be to kind of put in a tier list tasks that are more specific, like making the crab ninja or modeling this heebie-jeebie that's on screen right now. Sorry for the long pause, I almost said Tribelle. But since this is a shorter video and the project is not yet finished, so there are still more tasks to make, I think it makes more sense to opt for the first option, this video, and perhaps makes the other tier list in a different video once the project is done or almost finished. Okay, let's start with level design. So for this project, well, it's nothing really special because I'm not really changing anything. The level layouts are pretty much the same as in the original. I just add in some additional props here and there and play with the lighting. So it is enjoyable, that's for sure, but at the same time maybe a bit limiting. Overall, I like it, but I wouldn't call it like insanely fun or anything. So I think a B tier right in the middle sounds about right for me. Now let's move on to modeling. This I would like to break into two subcategories. One would be prop modeling and the other I would call character modeling. Let's start with the prop modeling. So overall, I love modeling. I love ZBrush and sculpting. It's something I really enjoy and something I have the most experience with. So it kind of feels comfortable to do. But making dozens of rocks, trees, plants, all these kind of archway structures, it does get tiresome after so many models that I have to make for this project. So for that reason, I'll put it in A and not S, even though I really love modeling. Just the repetitiveness of making rocks and wood over and over, it tends to get boring at times. Now character modeling, that's a completely different story. That is like one of my absolute favorites. Every single character was a blast. Even this tiny little heebie-jeebie they have on screen. It's such a tiny model that I could just half-ass it and no one would probably notice, but I don't know, he's just so cute, you know? I just get really attached to the characters that I model. I don't know if that's healthy, but yeah. Character modeling is S tier and that's it. 10 out of 10. Okay, next in line would be retopology, the process of making a low poly mesh out of your high poly mesh. So this is absolutely boring. It only applies to characters because for non-characters I use nanite. But yeah, this was always a chore for me. I think it's the one thing I wouldn't mind AI taking over. Yeah, I'd give it a D, but there are these days sometimes where I kind of feel like I don't want to focus on something much, just want to zone out while listening to a video or something. And in days like those, Retopo isn't that bad, so I'll be generous and give it a C. Okay, now there's texturing. I'm not going to separate this one between texturing characters and props because regardless of what I'm texturing to be, it feels somewhat samey. I guess the process just isn't that different. But yeah, this is something that I also find very enjoyable. Enjoyable enough in fact to give it an A tier. It's something that really brings your model to life, especially when done right. Okay, but what about rigging? Yeah, rigging isn't really my thing. It's something that I usually find a bit boring. Also, weight painting is something that can get pretty annoying at times. But I still like it more than retopology, so we'll put it at the same tier, but higher. So moving on to animation, I probably should split this into game animations and cutscenes, but since I'm using the original animations, I made so little game animations for the project that I'll just skip this one, and I'll just rank making cutscene animations. So here there are pretty big negatives and positives actually. Like the overall process is pretty tedious and time consuming, and I'd say it's rather difficult. But on the other hand, actually seeing an animation that I've made that I think came out well is for some reason really satisfying to me. I feel like it tends to be more satisfying than the other things for some reason. And also for this project specifically, I feel like the cutscenes are where I can let my creativity loose the most. Like for the rest of the game, I feel like I tend to stick pretty closely to the original. While for the cutscenes, I feel like I often have my own ideas that I like to add in. Like in that one cutscene where I make Murphy steal the camera from the player. In these new cutscenes that you haven't seen yet, there are also a couple things like that. So yeah, animating cutscenes, I think I'll give it an A tier. Even though while I'm animating cutscenes, I think I'd say that I'm rather miserable. It's just that the payoff makes it worth it. Oh, the time-lapse ended already, so let's take a little break from the tier list, and I'll talk about the animations that I created. So here you can see the idle cycle, where the heebie-jeebie is just sleeping. And right after that, we have the animation I made for when you collect it. So it makes this kind of graceful spin and flies away. I like how like a minute ago, I was saying that I don't really make any game animations for this project. And now I'm showing the game animations that I made, but never mind that. And then I have one more animation for when you wake it up. I make it fall into this brief state of panic, and then it just runs away. And now for the grand Matuvu reveal. If it looks a little low poly, it's because it is. I figured it's best to make this model a little simpler, since it's so small. Nonetheless, this is the idle cycle, and here's an animation I made for when it gets collected. I think it's fairly similar to the original one. Alright, let's take a look at these guys in Unreal Engine now. Alright, the tier list is still waiting to be finished. I guess I'll contradict myself again and actually put the Matuvu timelapse in the background. I just have nothing else to play. But I'll make it unwatchably fast so it ends when I'm done talking. So all I think is left is coding now. I think I should separate coding into the kind of gameplay coding, you know, Blueprint and C++, and the other coding type would be shaders, because they're just kind of different. So coding is something that I have the least experience in, which I'd say makes it the most exciting, because nearly every time I have to do something in code, it's probably something that I haven't really done much or at all. It always feels like a bit of a puzzle, and I do like a good puzzle. I like maths, so that's also something that I find appealing in coding. Yeah, I think coding is really fun, especially in blueprints. You know, I think I can even give it an S tier. It's just such a cool feeling to put in some code into the computer and then suddenly see your character running in the world or something like that. Now shader coding, yeah, I'd say it's also pretty fun. It's cool to figure out some kind of cool effect using shader math, and also anything that I can't figure out, there are tutorials for, because there are dozens of tutorials on shaders. But overall, it's not as appealing to me as regular coding, so I'll just give it a B. It's perfectly average. You know, I kind of forgot about particles. I think that's also something that deserves its own tier. So briefly, I'm not a huge enjoyer of making particle effects. I'll just give it a C and leave it at that. So to answer your question, Dalek, it would seem like animation was the most difficult and time-consuming for me personally. Especially when you consider that you spend a couple days for a couple seconds of animations that most people skip anyway. Yeah, thank you for the question. One more thing I want to say before I go is that I'm not really sure when the next video is going to come out. It's probably going to be a while again, but don't worry, that doesn't mean that I'm not working on the project. Honestly, it's just that almost all the stuff that's left to do are just not really worth making a video about. Like for example, making a main menu, I don't think it's worth anyone's time to watch a video about a main menu, I'll just start the full level walkthrough video that I'll make once the whole Fairy Council is finished from the main menu, and that'll cover that. So yeah, this statement is true for pretty much everything that's left before the Fairy Council is actually completed. I just wanted to address this topic because I've been getting more and more comments asking me whether I'm still working on the project, which is totally fine, of course. It makes me really happy that people cared as much. I'm not saying this to complain, I just want to put your worries to rest, that's it. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this one. Big thanks for watching, especially if you got this far. Bye bye!